Hello and welcome to Archaeologists Anonymous, a safe space for archaeology addicts out there. On today's episode, we'll be talking about top 5 Roman technologies of the future. Let's get into it. Number 5. Rotating restaurants. Ancient Romans actually invented a rotating dining room. The most famous one from ancient Rome was built by Emperor Nero for his Domus Aurea, which means House of Gold. It was this super bougie royal palace.
Classy, bougie, ratchet.
According to ancient author Suetonius, the main dining room was circular, and it rotated constantly day and night, like the world. So the dome of this dining room basically represented the heavens, and it, turned like the constellations in the sky. Just to make it that much bougier, this rotating dining room also had perfume dispensers and ways for rose petals to fall from the ceiling.
Classy, bougie, ratchet.
So, archaeologists thought for a long time that Suetonius and people like him were exaggerating about this rotating dining room, but we actually found it! Based on the archaeological evidence, it seems like the room turned through ball bearings, hydraulic power, and a system of gears. So yeah, they actually used water power to keep this room spinning. It's amazing that they were able to do this 2,000 years ago. And it's also amazing that we've wanted to make rotating restaurants for 2,000 years. The famous Ben Franklin quote is,
"Nothing in this world can be said to be certain, except for death and taxes."
But I think we can add to that list, people have always wanted to spin while they eat. Woo! Number 4. Hair curlers. The Latin name for the ancient Roman versions was calamistrum. It was basically a hollow tube made out of iron that you'd put in the fire to heat up, and then you'd wrap your hair around it to get curls. Interestingly, many women and men got their hair curled in ancient Rome. Emperor Nero, he seems to be showing up in this list quite a lot, hashtag glamour emperor. Nero had a famously curly hairstyle, and seems to have started a trend where more and more men curled their hair. The downside to using the curling iron on the daily, like some rich Romans did, is that it could cause hair damage and hair thinning. But wealthier Romans also had the money to buy wigs, so this wasn't the biggest problem. So yeah, Roman society was futuristic enough that they were curling their hair 2,000 years before we invented electricity.
My IQ level's 189. That is a very high IQ, okay?
Number 3. Underwater concrete. So, Roman concrete is very famous. It allowed for such amazing structures such as the Pantheon to be built. Romans actually made their best concrete out of pozzolana, which is a kind of volcanic ash or sand, and that means that in all of these impressive Roman concrete structures that you see, there's a bit of volcano. Now, that's pretty awesome, but I think the coolest thing about Roman concrete is that it could solidify underwater. This made coastal buildings on the Mediterranean, or buildings near lakes, a lot easier to build. One of the most important buildings this was used for was harbors, which facilitated trade and travel throughout the ancient world. Roman concrete is so good that a lot of it has survived basically undamaged after 2,000 years, even the stuff that's been underwater. Erosion who? Some scientists even say the way that Roman concrete interacts with seawater makes it stronger over time. There's some talk about trying to use Roman-style concrete today because it requires less cement, it can be baked at lower temperatures, and it can last longer and thus have a smaller environmental footprint. The only problem is, we don't really have the exact recipe for Roman concrete. We're still working on this one, especially because Roman concrete seems to last longer and be more eco-friendly. So this futuristic technology that the Romans developed might actually be in our future.
Everything is chrome in the future!
Number 2. Heated floors. Here we have a nice comfort invention. Before we had heated car seats, the Romans had heated floors. They did this with a hypocaustum, which essentially literally means under fire. Basically, the hypocaust circulated hot air from the furnace under the floor to warm it, and you can see all those little pillars make room for the hot air to go under the floor.
Oh, that's hot.
That's hot.
And these systems could also warm walls through pipes that they'd send hot air through, that they'd put in the walls. This was basically central heating 2,000 years before modern central heating. Hypocausts were used in public buildings, especially Roman baths. The way the Romans warmed their warm and hot baths was through hypocausts. They'd warm the water through the floor. It wasn't just baths. Some houses, including the emperor's private residence, had heated floors in them. Though they were pretty expensive, so it wasn't a thing you'd see in every Roman house. They were so expensive because they required constant fuel and labor to shovel that fuel into the furnace. And unfortunately, the labor behind this cushy, warm invention was largely slave labor. I am really glad the heated car seats of today don't require slave labor. And going on to number 1, Greek fire. Now you may be going, Greek fire? I thought we were talking about the Roman Empire. Well, Greek fire is called Greek fire because it was invented in 672 AD by the Byzantines, who were the Eastern Roman Empire that survived after the Western Roman Empire fell. The Eastern Romans, or the Byzantines, were based out of Greece, and the language of the empire became Greek. However, they were still technically the Roman Empire, and Greek fire is ancient. It was invented almost 1,500 years ago, so I think this one still counts for our list. Greek fire is kind of like an ancient flamethrower. It was a flammable compound or liquid that was launched out of a flame-throwing weapon. It was frequently used in naval battles and could actually still burn even while floating on water. Whoa! It could also be put in pots to throw as explosive grenades.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
So back to the name Greek fire. When the Crusaders came from the west, they saw this incredibly impressive flamethrowing weapon and named it Greek fire because most Byzantines spoke Greek. The actual Byzantines who invented the fire called it Pyromaikon, which means Roman fire. So the Crusaders gave us the name Greek fire, but the people who made it called Roman fire. It's a whole mess. Thanks, Crusaders.
Son, have you been reading heresy recently? Unacceptable.
But anyways, ancient flamethrowers and grenades were really powerful. But we don't have the recipe! It was a closely guarded secret, so it was lost to history, and we don't know how they made this. No! This Roman technology was so futuristic that we literally don't know how they did it today. So that brings us to the end of our list of futuristic ancient Roman technologies. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Sean Silvia of Archaeologists Anonymous. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on another video.